Well, hello again and welcome to our reading of the Acts of the Apostles, and we're up to chapter 5. I must confess I've always found this a very unpleasant section, and I'm not sure commentators have ever given a reasonable explanation for it, but here it is. So this is the first part is the story of Ananias and Sapphira. Interestingly, both of these are Jewish names. It's often interesting in the New Testament to look at the names and see whether they're Greek or Jewish names. So, tis aner, a certain man, it says Hananiah, although it's normally put into English as Ananias. So, Hananias Onomati by name, with Sapphira, with Sapphira, his wife. Epolesen, this is from polio, to sell. They sold Katama, literally a possession, but the context a bit later on tells us that it's a block of land. Kai enos physato, this is from nos phizomai, means to separate. Nosphi is apart or distinct, and this is the verb from that. So they separated off, or they kept off, understand, some of the money, apotes times, from the price. Genitive absolute here. This is from son oida, to know with, and this is the feminine participle here. So it's eidos eiduia, and that's what we're getting here. So his wife knowing it with him, so perhaps conspiring with him. So with the full knowledge of his wife, or his wife having known, and enenkas, this is an aorist participle from the enenk root from pharaoh. So the aorist of pharaoh is einenkon, or eining. It's a strong verb, but in New Testament Greek it's often becomes a shortened, becomes a weak aorist, and so they've unaugmented that, and that gives you the stem enenk, and then they've added on. Normally you'd add sigma alpha sigma for the aorist participle, but because we've got this guttural cluster here, they don't put the sigma in, so it's just enenkas for the aorist participle. It's always a tricky verb. This is, of course, from the verb pharaoh, which is irregular in Latin and in Greek, and in English for that matter, bring, brought, and so on. So they, having brought meros, a certain portion, main verb here, ethaken, from tithemi, they placed it beside the feet of the apostles. And Peter said, Hananiah, this is the vocative from this Hananias, it's a first declension, grammatically first declension, and so that's the vocative from first declension, masculine nouns. So, O Hananiah, vocative, diatif, why has Satan pleirosen from pleiro, an omicron verb, why has he filled your heart? The grammar's a little bit loose here. It's you have to understand so that you deceived the Holy Spirit, and so that nos physasthai, that's the aorist middle imperative from the verb that we had up here, so that you have separated off, so you've kept back some, understood, from the price of the Koriu, the land. Now, in this next verse, we have two participles, menon and prathin. So these are neuter participles. This is a present neuter participle, and this is an aorist passive neuter participle from piprasco, to sell. And so this is a question as well. So it's a question expecting the answer yes. So something like surely, and we have to supply the top chorion is the noun. That it's a neuter noun, and that's what these participles are going with. So surely, when understand the land was remaining, so while the land remained, did it not remain for you? So was it not yours? And being sold, aorist passive participle from peprasco, was it not, huparken just for like Amy, was it not in your power? So it's a slightly odd verse, and the grammar's a little bit difficult. So he's saying basically, when it was yours, well, it was yours. You didn't need to deceive anybody about it, and when you sold it, well, you had the money in your control. Why understand, is it that ethu, you, literally, you have placed, this is the second person aorist middle from tithami. So why is it that you placed this matter in your heart? So why have you done this? U psu sol. Now this is from pseudemi, and this is the second person. This is tricky here. This is second person, of course. Aorist middle. So the form of this would have been originally pseud, and then it's a pseud is the root, and then we're adding a sigma, and so before the sigma, the delta disappears, and it would originally have been eso, would be the original ending. And what happens then in the language, and you'll see forms like this back in Homer, what happens in the language is that the sigma drops out and you get a contraction here, and that turns into an omega. So the original ending was eso, so you get second person eso, third person eto, but this wretched sigma, as it happens to do a lot in Greek, disappears, and then you get a contraction of vowels, and you end up with this omega here that looks like first person, but is in fact, of course, second person singular. So you did not act deceptively to men, but to God. So pseudemi here is taking a dative in the sense of to give falsehood to men, but to God. And Hananiah, hearing these words, peson is the aorist infinitive, participle I should say, from pipto. To fall, the aorist is epeson, and there's the stem there, pes, and we get this aorist participle. So Ananias, having heard these words, having fallen, understand, to the ground, ex epsuken, this is from ek psuko, which is to give up your soul, and hence expired or died. So his soul left him. He gave up. We often say he gave up the ghost, and that's the sense of what this is here. This is a post-classical word, but it does occur in the Septuagint. There was great fear upon all those hearing, and having arisen, having stood up, the neoteroi, the young men, sun estelan, this is from sustelo, is to wrap up. So they wrapped him up, presumably in a shroud, and ex enencantes, this is from ek pharaoh, this is that enenc root we mentioned before. So having taken him out, Ethapson, they buried him. This is from Thapto. They buried him.